Hey everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us for JNUC session 1234, also known as the worst password ever that I find completely ironic. That is being our JNUC session for a security discussion. So with that said, I am super excited that we have Eric Boyd back from UC San Diego Health to talk with us about Jamf Protect a year later. Eric had joined us last year to discuss how they're using all of our solutions. But this year, especially since Jamf Protect is new, we wanted to invite Eric back, and we're so glad he's here to talk with us through a few things. An overview of their Apple and Jamf infrastructure, how they were adopting Jamf Protect, and then a year later, they were very early adopter of Jamf Protect, and we're curious for them to share and are really excited to hear some updates from where they are in using it, what they found along the way, what they're able to share. Keep in mind, it's security, so we can't share everything under the sun. But at the same time, we do believe that there are perhaps important takeaways to be discussed that could apply to other highly regulated industries and organizations, just like UC San Diego Health. So I want to welcome you back, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Kat. It's great to be back again. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you too. So I guess we'll just start from the beginning. It's been a year later with Jamf Protect. You're in a highly regulated industry, as I just mentioned. How's it going? Where do you want to start?
Well, we have a couple, right? We have, of course, everyone knows with healthcare we have the HIPAA regulations, but we're also a teaching university and teaching hospital, so we have worse. We have FERPA. That's a joke to all the education folks out there. So yeah, we have to not only protect our patients, but we also have to protect our students and want to obviously do that in the best way possible and maintain the Apple experience for our users.
So refresh everyone's memories from last time, or if this is their first JNUC and they maybe didn't catch our session last time, how did you end up adopting Macs and an endpoint-only Mac solution when you already have other solutions available to you? Why jump on being an early adopter of Jamf Protect, focusing only on Mac-only endpoints? It's pretty contrary compared to what else is out there.
Well, I guess that's where we can say our vendors sort of forced our hand there. They didn't have a lot of support with the current operating system, and in some of those cases, there was negative support, meaning there was, well, just remove it, and we'll let you know when there's a solution available. So obviously, that wasn't going to work for us. But then that gave us the opportunity to deploy Jamf Protect out to our devices. I think I can touch on our other solutions at a later time, but let's go ahead and come back to that.
No worries. So I would say when we think of how many Macs you have, I'm going to assume you're pretty much like standard high ed enterprise. There's usually a much larger Windows to Mac ratio. What would you say your ratio from Mac to Windows would be?
It's actually varying year to year, but on average, it's about a 1-to-8 ratio. With for every 8 Windows devices, we have one Mac. So we have this year we've started to see that ratio get a little closer to 7, but we're not quite there yet.
Okay, so your Mac population has grown, but it still stays pretty much in line with the industry, where there's definitely, a lower Mac population to Windows, and that's perfectly fine. But I think the part that I find curious, or at least what I hear a lot commonly in high ed and enterprise, why do we need a special solution for the Macs? And I think that's where I also find it interesting, because most of these organizations with large employee footprints usually you need to have maybe multiple endpoint solutions in place. Can you share, at least disclose, what that looks like to the best you can? Again, I know it's a security topic and
Yeah,
security.
obviously I can't name names, right? I can tell the Jamf JNUC community, yes, we're using Jamf Protect, but other than that, I can't go into the others. But I can confirm that we do have a number of other solutions out there, and maybe now's a kind of a good time to bring up the fact that everyone says, well, we want to have like a single solution for all of our devices, and then you sit down with them and they go, well, do you have a large number of Linux devices? No, not really. Do you have a large number of Android devices? Well, we have some. Do you have a large number of iOS devices? Well, we have a few of those too. And then like, are those mobile devices your main security? Well, not for this. For this, we're focusing on the Windows and the Macs. It's like, okay, so you have obviously a solution that's really good for the Windows environment. Why not have a solution that's really good for the Apple environment? And after having deployed Jamf Protect, and we've been utilizing it for a year now, it's very clear to our InfoSec team that they've been very, very happy with the results that they've seen so far. So I think they've kind of come around to seeing the benefits of having a platform specific solution.
I think that's really great. So I guess to sum it up, you're using Jamf Protect, which we already kind of knew from the title, but we also can confirm you're using other solutions as well. And I think that's relatable to others listening in that either are also using Jamf Protect or have not yet adopted it, that you're coming from a similar place, similar regulations, and similar perhaps security requirements. What kind of info perhaps were you receiving with some of the other security solutions that maybe have to be in place due to another security requirement? But I'm curious if you could paint a picture of what kind of information you were receiving from these other security solutions, perhaps prior to Jamf Protect.
Yeah, I'd say that was one of the big eye-opening pieces here with kind of doing a compare and contrast. We were really struggling with our other solutions to be able to identify that and tie that back to a Mac. Things such as, the randomized MAC addresses that you get from plugging in a different dock or a different dongle where the Ethernet address is now tied to what you've plugged your device into. And since, we're kind of in a hotel environment in some of our offices where people can sit down at any cubicle and use that cubicle for the day, it really doesn't help our InfoSec team to be able to identify where or whose computer is having an issue, but maybe only identifying where that computer that was doing something suspicious was. So, being able to kind of identify the device specifically based off the serial number has been really easy then to kind of go in and then open up Jamf Pro and see all the different details on the device, as well as the device ownership, and even checking in with ServiceNow to see how the devices are linked to the end user using the device. So those were some really nice advantages that we were able to see. And additionally, we were able to pick up on a lot more information and see a lot more information. So things that we were finding in Jamf Protect, we didn't necessarily have visibility to in the other solutions we were using. So a lot more of the Mac specific threats may not have made it into the other vendors' solutions. So we were actually able to gain a lot more visibility than what we were able to see previously.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. So I guess to build off of that, what has perhaps surprised you in your findings in using Jamf Protect? Anything you didn't anticipate?
Well, when we were sold Jamf Protect, and I give equally all sales and engineers and account executives who are selling the product, I give them all the same kind of like, yeah, sure, it can't work that way, right? Knowing that Jamf Protect utilized Apple's machine learning languages and leveraging off of the Apple frameworks that existed there. It was like, okay, great, yeah, that's fine. Either it's going to show a whole bunch of false negatives, or it's going to just not do anything. But yeah, we have a fun one that we encountered earlier this year. There was an Office plugin called PaperPile, and Protect was identifying it as suspicious because every time a few of our users would open it up, the Mac would suddenly start sending out tons of curl commands out to the internet, and just looked really, really suspect because there'd be over 100 every time somebody opened a document. Now, like I said, we're a teaching hospital. We have a lot of researchers, and they like to cite their work. And what this application was doing was going through every time they open their document, going through all of their citations and validating that the links were correct and that there wasn't anything bad. So it was a tool that was definitely helping and making making their lives easier so that they could identify something that was missing or broken, without having to manually check and spot check all their work. But this was definitely unusual behavior, and it was really nice to see Jamf Protect catch this, ask us to look into it, validate it, and then we've got to work with Stuart on the Jamf Protect team to say, okay, we validated this. Let's go ahead and add this to the allow list, because our security teams investigated this, and it's while we were glad to see what it was doing, it was not actually an issue after all.
No, that's actually a really great point. Sometimes it's as big as, whoa, check this out, to this is a bit suspicious. And I'm really glad it was catching your attention, because sometimes you don't know till you look into it of what's truly a security incident and what could be a security incident. And anyone in security wants to make sure that if it is a true security incident, that they got that awareness to act on it. So at least you have the option for that versus it being in hindsight. So I'm really glad to hear it's surprised you in that way. Any reporting features come to use that were helpful, or you found to be more helpful than you thought since you had first looked at it?
I would say we've really grown to love the dashboard. It's making things very, very clean and easy for our InfoSec team, who, was especially initially really resistant to yet another tool to use. But having everything that they want at their fingertips, both the insights as well as the customized dashboards, really makes things easy for them to see at a glance. And if they hear of, hey, there's this thing going around, what's our surface area for being exposed to this, and they can immediately jump to the dashboard and go, okay, all of our machines here are compliant except for these two. Let's send a field tech out to investigate. So that makes it really, really quick and gives us a much easier time being able to identify and kind of assign mentally what that change in the workflow is going to be. Like how much work is this going to be to look into this?
I'm really glad to hear that the InfoSec team, I know it's pretty common, I'm going to speak for most people listening, that there's some resistance there to adopting one more thing, right? One more solution. We have enough. So I'm really glad to see that they're finding a lot of value in the interactive dashboard. Just kind of building off of that, anything your InfoSec team found interesting or welcoming aside from the dashboard?
Yeah, I mean, with your Jamf plans, you can go through, or Jamf Protect plans, you can go through and specify how you want that log integration to be set up, as well as how it's working with your SIEM, and making sure that it's all aligned correctly and that you're getting the right information in there as you want. So that whole process was really nice and welcomed by our team.
Really glad to hear that. What as I kind of like dig a little, and again, answer what you can. Don't want to get Eric Boyd in trouble, but I'm going to ask any any kind of visibility you were getting to external threats or malicious behavior. And I know that's always touchy, but I think it's safe to assume any large organization is bound to encounter security threats. So I guess like any visibility you were getting to these external threats or malicious behavior.
Well, as I mentioned before, previously we had a hard time identifying those machines and figuring out where they were and how to determine if what we were seeing was legitimate or suspect. So that was a little difficult in the past. Jamf Protect's made that a little bit easier for us to be able to go in and identify the device specifically by the serial number, see all of the processes and essentially that process chain. So we're able to make a much more informed decision, know what actually is on the device by comparing its record with what's in Jamf Pro, and then being able to associate the two and adjust what our risk factors are. And then since we know whose machine that is, we're able to then send out, if needed, a field support team to go take a look at or collect the machine. Or if it's just a software piece that we just want to grab and take a look at a binary, we can utilize Jamf Pro to pull that information directly from the device.
I think it's great that you are thinking about we're identifying by serial number, not just like by the desk or location, because right now in the world of everyone being remote or only a certain amount of people might be allowed in the office at a time, may not always be sitting at your usual desk. So the fact you could be from home or mobile, I think really helps paint that picture to the kind of visibility and that threats can happen pretty much anywhere. So it's really great to hear that you've been able to kind of leverage Jamf Protect, but also work with Jamf Pro on any additional reporting or action or remediation as a follow-up. I guess as I think about it too, a year later, any memorable situations that you can share?
I do kind of want to point out that our initial deployment was really actually easy, especially compared to some of the horror stories you hear when you're talking to the other Mac admins and hearing what they're trying to do and how they're trying to get it to work.
No,
Time and
haven't.
time again, you'll hear TCC and privacy payloads and how, the system extension needs to be approved before that's deployed. And, you know, even when we did our initial rollout, that was really easy and very seamless. And now with the additional functionality that's built into Jamf Pro over the past year, so a lot more of those functionality and those features of making sure that those payloads are there before you try to deploy the Jamf Protect software. It's just it just works. We're able to deploy stuff out and not have our users actually raising flags going, what's going on with my machine. So it helps us build trust with our users to let them know, and visibility of like, here's what we're doing with your machine, without them feeling like we're grinding their machines to a halt and preventing them from using the computer they paid for, by us then stealing processes to make sure that their work is safe. Because the end user is going to feel like, hey, I'm not deliberately doing anything wrong. If I accidentally click on a link, I shouldn't be penalized, for having 30% of my machine's CPU always in use in case I click something. So it's really nice that we're able to utilize a solution that and that Jamf has a solution that is there for us and for our users, and is respectful of the work that the end user actually needs to do with their machine.
I'm really glad you called out the employee and end user experience, and that's really our goal. I know Apple always wants to have an amazing user experience, and as we have adopted and continue to build, we want to make sure at Jamf we're not interfering with that mission and that we're only working to enhance that mission. So I'm really pleased to hear that a year later, that's something that comes to mind. So thank you for sharing that with those listening in.
Yeah, and that's a great point to call out, Kat, because obviously, if you are alienating your users, they're just going to try and find ways to get around your management and your security software. And we want to be there for our users. We don't want to be an obstacle for them. So I think a lot of times that when you have the opportunity to make something visible and make something transparent, letting everybody know what it is that you're doing, I think that's very, very valuable. And I kind of love the way that Apple has made, down to every single payload that's pushed to their device, the end user can actually go through and see step by step what's being managed and what's being controlled on their device. So, yeah, thanks for being aware and mindful of that. So thank you.
I'll pass that along to all those who did the building for us and continue to. Thank you. I do want to call back to what you had mentioned earlier. I keep thinking of your organization being regulated. You mentioned HIPAA, you mentioned FERPA. Jamf Protect has a number of CIS benchmarks and dashboards available. How do the insights from Jamf Protect and having those benchmarks available on the dashboard, how does that help your organization?
Yes. So that I think everybody kind of has this idea of, they've heard being compliant with HIPAA and what that means, right? There isn't this like one checklist of this is everything you have to do to be compliant, because it's actually more integrated in what your organization is doing and how those compliancy pieces fall into place. So there isn't a you must do X. There is, if you're doing X and it's also doing Y and then it touches Z, then you need to make sure that these things are in place. So it's a very fluid and a very evolving process. And that's what's really nice about how those dashboards work and how all of the different, as you mentioned, all the CIS benchmarks work, because we're actually able to pick and choose which of those pieces of the dashboards and benchmarks and essentially design our own so that they match, right? Because as we are UC San Diego Health, we are we have to comply by the policies that are set by UC San Diego. And then UC San Diego also has to comply by the policies that are set by the University of California Office of the Presidents. So we have to obey the regents and then UCOP and then UCSD and then UCSD Health, right? So all of these different things all apply. And so simply being able to say like, oh, well, this benchmark and this list of benchmarks, those are great. They're helpful to get you up and running really quickly. But it's been very, very nice for us to be able to kind of combine and choose and pick which things are the most valuable for us and just have those on a single screen. So those insights are super helpful.
So just to kind of clarify, especially for those who may not be as familiar, so we have insights, we've got the CIS benchmarks preloaded, but what you're doing is you're prioritizing basically which ones you want to make sure you see at the top of your list that are of most value to you day in, day out. Yeah, and that's a pretty neat customization that I think is pretty amazing.
And then we're not wasting screen real estate on the dashboards that aren't applicable to us at all. So we can minimize those, and you don't see this like glaring red like panic button siren going off like, hey, this is bad, because like, no, that actually doesn't affect us at all. Like this isn't even applicable to us, and we're not utilizing that at all. So it may be a CIS benchmark of like, this is what you should be doing. But again, we're able to focus it on what actually is relevant to our organization.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that, and I'm glad that's working out for you. I did want to kind of tie back a few things as we start to perhaps wrap up. How did your security team get buy-in to do this? You kind of hinted at it earlier. There's already enough out there. There's a larger Windows to Mac. But for those listening in and they're saying we'd love to use this, but we're also mostly a Windows shop, our admins, don't feel perhaps a Mac specific endpoint security solution is necessary. I'll just ask flat out, what wizardry did you use to get the buy-in? Because that is something that is a huge challenge for a lot of organizations that have expressed we would love to do it. We're the Mac admin, we see that value, but others who are mostly, they've served Windows their whole life, they may not understand. How did that communication unfold, or what best practices can you share?
Well, like I said, it's we're all here to support our users, and we're all here to make sure that they have the tools that they need to do their job, and that we're able to ensure that they're compliant and that they're not inadvertently doing something that's going to expose them to risk. So, it's having that maintained relationship and letting there be open feedback back and forth. I actually got my start with UC San Diego Health on the InfoSec team, and I can't deny that that's been a very vital piece to being able to communicate effectively with that team, knowing what's important to them, because it was obviously the most important thing to me when I was on that team. So knowing what they need and knowing what they want, and getting them the information that is most effective, right? A lot of times when you're familiar and working with a specific tool, you're able to work around that tool very, very quickly. But again, if that tool isn't actually providing you the real data of what's going on in your environment and isn't showing you all of the different risks or the different concerns that you should have when you're dealing with Macs in your environment, that tool isn't doing you the good that you think it is. And, being able to have a software solution that is tied to the platform that you're working with, it really can't be understated, the importance of that. I think that we are seeing a lot of Apple endpoint engineers working with their InfoSec teams and seeing a lot of that, a lot of things in Jamf Pro that they're able to build policies that are helping out their InfoSec teams. Those are really, really important, and especially now more so than ever. So if there is something that is seen, how do we do the bare minimum of patching what it needs to be patched? B, how do we work with the InfoSec team to get them the information that they can then see? And with everybody remote working right now, it's not realistic for you to be able to say, well, here's the addresses of all the computers and where they exist. Go drive out to 147 different locations. That's not going to work anymore. It's not like being able to walk into an office and see everybody's computer. So I guess to sum up, we're seeing a lot of use cases here. And again, like I said, this was originally initiated by our previous solution, not really monitoring the Mac environment correctly. And our InfoSec team is just saying, look, we need a solution that's going to work for Big Sur, and it's going to need to work with Monterey and future operating systems, and not dealing with some perpetual, this is coming soon. So, just to tie it, again, like I said, to tie it back together, having a solution that's going to work with your InfoSec team without making them do a lot more work has really kind of made, I think, everybody's life a little easier, where they're able to, use their log management tools to be able to pull in logs from the Mac environment, and also from Jamf Protect, and be able to see all of those logs in one centralized location, so they can kind of get their dashboard, if you will, there, and then being able to drill down both within Jamf Protect as well as Jamf Pro.
Thank you. I know we're pretty close to time. I just wanted to finalize, I guess, a few thoughts with you. You had mentioned about earlier Big Sur, compatibility, and a lot of organizations would argue it's common just to not upgrade. And sometimes we both know like that's a security gap in itself. So, aside from getting new features, yes, we offer same day support for Apple technology and upgrades at Jamf for all of our solutions. Why do you feel you needed the option for compatibility when so many organizations seem to be okay with not upgrading at all or just hanging tight? I would love to hear your thoughts on that, and then we'll close out with some final commentary.
Well, we are in one of the, I guess, not that unique scenario. A lot of educational institutions have the same thing. It's called a campus bookstore, and that's where their employees can just go to the bookstore and buy their computers. They'll always have the latest OS on them, or I should even clarify that they'll always have a random unknown quantity of what that OS version is going to be. You don't know if that Mac has been sitting in the back of the bookstore for 6 months or if it's brand new and it arrived from Apple yesterday. So we can't really say we're going to defer or say that we're not going to support these devices, because we can't tell our users that they can't go out and buy their machine. They're going to just go and get it elsewhere, and then we have a device that's not managed. So it's far easier for us to work with, staying current and utilizing the technologies that are current or that support the current device. To touch on that, you hear a lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of organizations that kind of push back on this, and a lot of those are because of dealing with vendors that don't support the latest OS or have like delays built in. And okay, a week or two is probably sustainable, but telling somebody they have to wait a month is not. And really, it's been a huge benefit to follow along some of the other great Mac admins and a lot of the great organizations, and to stand firm and to tell our vendors that, we're going to do our annual reviews and our contracts annually. And if your software isn't going to be supported on the next version of the OS, we're not renewing. We need that commitment. We need to know that we're going to be able to support that year after year after year. And it's obviously much cheaper to stay with one vendor that is going to stay on top of things than it is to stay with a vendor that is constantly tripping over themselves and having a hard time staying current. And so if you're one of those vendors, please make use of Appleseed for IT. Please get out there, see the builds that come out 3 months before the OS is even released to the public, and you can see how your software is going to perform with that. So there's really no longer an excuse out there. Apple's made everything available. Jamf's done a great job with their beta programs as well. I'm not sure how much I can talk about those pieces. Sorry, Kat. But Jamf's made their betas available for folks to sign up for and to test and make sure that their environment's working together very well. So, if you're a Mac admin, please make use of both of those. If you're a software vendor who is designing your software, please make use of those. But you're only going to help, as Kat mentioned, you're only going to help your users stay current and stay secure by staying on the most common software. And if Apple does detect a bug or an exploit is released, they're always going to focus on securing that in the current OS. And if it's possible, then they'll go back and fix it. But their guideline is always to stay current. So I'm very much on that train, and I am definitely pulling the whistle. So as always, my first gut in talking to a vendor, my first gut reaction is really depending on, how much do I like this vendor by saying, how current are you and how ready are you for the next OS?
I appreciate that, and I'm glad you see a lot of value in that. I know our engineers work super hard to make sure that We not only deliver on same-day support for each and every one of our solutions for our customers, but to also provide access to betas so you can confidently update or upgrade, or if an employee accidentally does the update for you unbeknownst to you for whatever reason, and however that happens, I like to think of it as everyone can still sleep at night. So I wanted to say thank you so much. I know we're about at time. Any final thoughts, Eric, or advice or anything that you've learned that you just want to share that maybe I forgot to ask you with anyone listening right now?
I just kind of want to just call out that Jamf Protect was super easy for us to deploy. The improved device performance made it a huge win for our users. And the fact that, we have all the different ties-ins that you have for being able to get your logging into your different systems, that made it super helpful. And we didn't alienate our InfoSec team to do it. So all three of those, I think, were the biggest wins that we've had this year.
Well, thank you. I wanted to say thank you one more time for joining us today. It's so great to have you back. It's always great to work with you. Thank you for those listening, and we appreciate you taking time for this fireside chat with Kat and Eric to discuss lessons learned a year later with Jamf Protect. We are always here at Jamf to help answer any questions you have. And once again, thank you for listening.